This is Next Gen Nexus, your premier source for next-generation technology insights.
All right, let's dive into something that I think is pretty relevant these days.
Definitely relevant, especially for parents.
Yeah, parental control apps, huh?
Big topic.
We're talking Apple Family Share, Google Family Link, all that good stuff.
And we've got some great expert comparisons to dig into.
So whether you're a parent thinking about becoming one, or just curious how this tech stuff works.
Or maybe you just want to know how to keep those kids in check.
Exactly.
This deep dive is for you.
Think about it. We used to just worry about how much TV kids watched. Now it's the whole digital world.
The Wild West out there.
And these apps are right in the middle of it all.
We're going to be talking about sharing apps, but not wallets, setting digital curfews.
Oh, and get this. Even knowing when your kid leaves soccer practice.
All thanks to these apps.
Pretty wild.
Peace of mind for parents in the digital age.
I like that.
For sure.
So first things first, what are these parental control apps?
In the simplest terms, they're apps that help parents set some boundaries and keep a close eye on how their kids are using their phones and tablets.
Digital ground rules.
Basically.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's start with Apple's Family Share.
Sounds good.
This one, it keeps it all in the Apple family, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Everyone needs an iPhone, an iPad, or a Mac.
Uh-huh.
But the really cool part is it's kind of like a family plan, but for apps.
Oh.
You can share music, apps, even things like Apple TV Plus.
Wow.
All without sharing an Apple ID.
So no more kids going on those spending sprees on your credit card.
Exactly. That's one of the big benefits.
That's huge.
But there's more to it than just that.
Oh.
Family Share also has this feature called Screen Time, which is, well, everyone's talking about it these days.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
It's all about like setting those limits on how much time kids spend on their devices, right?
It is, but it's actually a lot more than just, setting a daily limit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can get really specific and set limits for individual apps. Like maybe an hour a day for social media, but then unlimited time for educational apps.
Interesting. So it's not just saying, like, use your phone less.
Yeah.
It's more about choosing how they're using it.
Exactly. You can even schedule, what's it called? Downtime? Yeah. Like homework time, dinner time.
Okay.
Only the apps that you choose are available during those times.
So if they try to get on TikTok or whatever.
Exactly. Blocked.
Smart.
And then you've got content restrictions too.
Content restrictions.
You can block or restrict apps, and not just by age ratings, but based on your own judgment.
So it's pretty flexible.
Very flexible.
Not just a blanket no to everything.
Exactly.
Hold on, though, before we go any further. What's this whole Apple ID thing?
Right. Some folks might not know.
Yeah.
It's basically your account for everything, Apple.
Got it.
And yeah, it's linked payments, which is why sharing isn't always the best idea.
So that's where Family Share comes in.
Exactly.
Got it.
Keeps things separate.
Okay, so Family Share is all about being in control, but also giving your kids some freedom at the same time.
Finding that balance.
What's the catch?
The biggest catch is that it only works if everyone's using Apple devices.
Oh, I see.
If you've got a mix of iPhones and Androids in the family,
Right.
it's not going to be the best fit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So for those Android families out there, there's Google's Family Link.
That's the one.
And that one's, I'd say it's less about sharing and more about keeping a close watch on what your kids are doing.
You could say that Family Link really gives parents a detailed look at what their kids are doing on their Android devices.
It's like a digital guardian angel.
I like that.
Uh-huh.
You can see detailed app usage reports. So it's not just like, oh, they used this app. It's like they used it for this long.
So you really get to know their digital habits inside and out.
Pretty much.
Wow.
And there's web filtering, the ability to block specific content, anything inappropriate or just, risky.
Okay, so even if they find a way to get around those app limits, you still have some control over what they're seeing online.
For sure, you're one step ahead.
And then there's this, I think this is really cool. It's called geofencing.
Geofencing, yeah.
So imagine you want to know when your kid gets to school or leaves soccer practice. You can set these virtual boundaries around those places.
It's like an invisible fence, but digital.
I like that.
Uses your phone's location to trigger actions.
And your phone will ping you when they enter or leave.
Exactly.
So you get notifications without them even having to check in.
Right. It's great for safety and just knowing where your kid is without that constant texting back and forth.
I can see that being a relief for everyone involved.
Definitely.
So Family Link is all about like really knowing what's going on.
Transparency.
Are there any downsides to that?
Well, I mean, some kids might feel like it's a little too big brother,
Right.
watching their every move.
Yeah, makes sense.
And of course, it only works on Android.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind.
But there's something else I wanted to mention.
Sure.
You said Family Link works even on devices the kid might not own,
That's right.
like a borrowed tablet, or using a public computer at the library.
Exactly.
That's different from Family Share, right?
Absolutely. That's one of Family Link's big advantages.
Okay.
No matter what device they're using, as long as they're signed in with their Google account, those Family Link boundaries are still in place.
That's a huge plus for a lot of parents, especially with school devices and shared computers becoming so common.
Makes sense.
And did I hear this right? Family Link is free.
That's right. No subscription fees, nothing like that.
Okay, so we've got Apple's Family Share, all about sharing and being part of that Apple ecosystem.
Right.
And then we've got Google's Family Link, really focused on giving parents a closer look at what's happening on those Android devices.
Two different approaches.
How do they compare head to head?
Well, the first big difference is what we've been talking about, device compatibility,
Right.
Family Share, Apple only, Family Link, Android.
So that's decision number one right there.
Yep.
What about in terms of features?
Okay, so if you're mostly trying to save money on apps and subscriptions,
Right.
Family Share's Family Plan is a huge perk.
That makes sense.
But if you're more concerned with, monitoring what your kid is doing online and setting those digital boundaries, Family Link has a clear advantage.
Got it. So it really depends on what you're looking for.
It does.
Okay. What about ease of use?
Both apps are designed to be pretty user-friendly, even if you're not a tech wizard.
That's good to know.
It's all pretty straightforward to set up.
And of course, no app is perfect.
Of course not.
There are some potential downsides to both of these.
Sure.
Like kids might figure out ways to get around the restrictions.
Sure.
Or there could be some impact on battery life, those kinds of things.
No system is foolproof.
Yeah, that's fair.
But those are details.
Exactly. And we don't want to dwell on the negatives here.
It'd be dumb.
So let's talk about the big question. How do you choose the right app for your family?
Well, it all comes down to what your family needs and what devices you use.
Right.
If everyone's on iPhones, Family Share is kind of a no-brainer.
Makes sense.
If you're an Android family, Family Link is the way to go.
It's that simple.
Pretty much.
This is all so interesting.
Yeah, this stuff is important.
We need to be talking about these things more.
I agree.
I think everyone should hear this.
Spread the word.
Seriously, share this with your friends, family, other parents, anyone who might be trying to figure out this whole digital parenting thing.
It's a conversation worth having.
It really is. And we'll be back in a moment to dive even deeper.
You know what's really fascinating about these apps?
What's that?
They're not just about restricting and monitoring.
Oh, I kind of thought that was the main point.
There's like this whole other layer to it. It's about teaching kids how to, be responsible in the digital world.
Okay.
Helping them develop healthy tech habits.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. So think about it this way. With Family Share, you're setting those screen time limits, right?
Yeah.
The content restrictions, all that stuff. But you're also having conversations with your kids about WHY. Those limits are there.
Okay.
You're teaching them about balance and making conscious choices about how they spend their time online.
So it's not just about saying no. It's about explaining the why behind the no.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. And then with Family Link, you've got those detailed usage reports, right? Those can actually be a really great starting point for conversation.
There I see.
You can sit down with your kid and say hey, I noticed you spent 3 hours on this game yesterday. How did that make you feel? Did you enjoy it? Was it a good use of your time?
That's a really good point.
It's about using those monitoring features, not just as a way to, police them,
Right.
but as a way to start a dialogue.
I like that a lot.
And that dialogue is so important because ultimately we want our kids to become, responsible digital citizens.
Right. Not just rule followers,
Exactly.
but critical thinkers who can actually navigate the online world safely and thoughtfully.
You good.
Love that phrase, digital citizens.
It's a good one.
It's like we're preparing them for a whole new world with its own set of rules and responsibilities.
It really is a whole new world out there.
And just like in the real world,
Yeah,
there are going to be challenges and temptations online.
absolutely.
And it's our job as parents to kind of equip them.
Give them the tools, the
Yeah.
skills they need to make good choices.
And these apps can be a part of that toolkit.
They can be, for sure.
But as we've been saying, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Nope.
the best approach is going to look different for every family.
Every family's unique.
So true.
And every kid's different too.
Okay, speaking of different, let's talk about teenagers for a minute.
Oh yeah, teenagers.
This is where things get even more complicated, right?
It definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Because they're more independent.
Right.
They've got their own social lives, their own online identities.
Totally.
It's like this delicate balance between giving them the freedom they want,
right,
but also maintaining some level of oversight.
Yeah. How do you find that balance?
So how do these apps even fit into that equation? I mean, teenagers are pretty tech savvy these days.
They are. They grew up with this stuff.
So like second nature to them.
Right. So it becomes less about like strict control and more about open communication and trust.
Okay.
At this age, it's so important to involve your teenager in the conversation
About
those digital boundaries and expectations.
instead of just like laying down the law.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, here are the concerns I have about online safety and privacy.
Right.
How can we work together to address those while still, respecting your need for some autonomy?
It's a collaboration.
Yep.
Finding that middle ground where everyone feels heard.
And respected. And maybe even giving them some ownership over the process. Like letting them choose which apps they're willing to have limited or monitored.
That's a great idea. Giving them some agency can make a huge difference
Yeah, I could see that.
in terms of buy-in and cooperation.
It's all about striking that balance, right? Protecting them, but also empowering them.
Precisely.
And that balance is going to shift and change
Constantly.
as they get older and more mature.
It's a moving target.
Our role as parents is to constantly reassess and adjust our approach.
It's a learning process
You said it.
for everyone involved.
It's like we're constantly learning and evolving right alongside our kids.
That's the truth.
That's what makes parenting so challenging.
And so rewarding.
You know what else is rewarding?
What's that?
Sharing this knowledge with other people.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking about all the parents I know who could benefit from this conversation.
Absolutely. Me too.
This is something worth sharing.
Spread the word.
It's not just about the apps themselves.
It's about the bigger picture.
Right. It's about raising those responsible digital citizens.
You got it.
So if you're listening to this right now
Yeah.
and thinking, yes, this is exactly what I'm struggling with,
Definitely.
do yourself a favor, share this deep dive with a friend, a family member,
Anyone who's going through the same thing.
anyone who's on this parenting journey with you.
We're all in this together, right?
Exactly. It's a whole new world out there.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about setting those boundaries, monitoring usage, having those tough conversations.
We have a lot of ground covered.
But there's one big question that keeps coming back to me.
Oh, I'm curious. What is it?
Do these apps actually make kids more responsible with technology?
Okay.
Or do they just get better at finding loopholes?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it's like any rule or restriction out there.
Right.
There's always going to be someone trying to find a way around it.
Especially kids.
Oh, yeah. They're digital natives. They grew up with this technology.
It's second nature to them.
We've got to acknowledge that.
So maybe it's less about like preventing them from ever bending the rules
Right.
and more about teaching them how to do it ethically and responsibly.
That's a good point.
Like knowing when it's okay to push those boundaries a little bit.
Interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, they are going to figure out ways to bypass those restrictions.
Absolutely.
At some point, it's going to happen.
It's inevitable.
It is, but we can teach them to think about the why.
The why behind it.
Exactly.
Like, why are these rules even here in the first place?
Understanding that there are consequences
Right.
to their actions online, just like there are in the real world.
And that their digital footprint matters.
Oh, it matters a lot.
That what they do online can have like real world implications
For sure.
they might not even think about.
Long-term consequences.
Right.
We've got to teach them that.
It's about instilling a sense of digital citizenship
It is.
that goes beyond just knowing how to use the technology. It's about understanding the social and ethical implications
The bigger picture.
of their actions.
Exactly.
This is getting pretty deep,
It is.
but I think it's so important.
It's crucial.
We're talking about like shaping the next generation of digital citizens here.
That's a big responsibility.
And it's a huge responsibility.
One that we share with them, though.
It really is.
We're all in this together.
And it's not something we can do alone. Well, it takes a village, right?
It does.
Other parents, educators, everyone involved in a kid's life.
We need to be having these conversations with everyone.
Yeah, with policymakers, with teachers.
It's a collective effort.
to guide these kids.
Absolutely.
We need to create like a culture of responsible technology use.
A culture where kids are empowered
Yeah.
to be critical thinkers and
Yeah.
ethical decision makers.
In the digital world, that's the dream.
That's a powerful vision.
It is.
And it starts with us, with the choices we make as parents,
Right.
and the conversations we have with our kids.
And maybe, just maybe, these parental control apps can be like a small part of that bigger conversation.
A tool among many.
Exactly.
Maybe they can be a stepping stone, a way to open up those lines of communication.
Yeah.
And start building that foundation of trust and responsibility.
It's not about the app itself, it's about what it allows us to do.
Exactly.
I like that. That's a hopeful thought.
It is.
And I think it's a good place to leave our listeners for now.
Sounds good.
With a sense of hope and a call to action.
To keep the conversation going.
Exactly.
Let's empower our kids to be the best digital citizens they can be. It's a journey we take together.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
But as always, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
And there's so much more to explore.
There's so much more to discuss when it comes to this topic.
Definitely.
And we encourage you to continue that exploration
Yes.
with your family and friends.
These aren't easy topics,
They're not,
but they're so important to talk about today.
for sure. We can't ignore these challenges.
We can't.
We have to be informed and involved in our kids' digital lives.
Absolutely.
For their sake and ours.
For everyone's sake.
And remember, tech is just a tool.
It's a tool.
It can be used in so many ways.
Good and bad.
Our job is to guide our kids towards a positive, empowering relationship with technology.
Well said.
We've given you a lot to think about,
We have.
but hopefully it's the start of some important conversations in your own families.
I hope so.
Will you say one last time, share this with someone?
Absolutely. The more we talk about this stuff,
Yeah.
the better equipped we'll all be to navigate this new world
It's not just about control. It's about raising a generation.
that uses tech thoughtfully.
Exactly. Thanks for listening to Next Gen Nexus.